So as in this patient, we're going to start by fabricating a lingual arch appliance. If you plan on making your own lingual arch, you'll need to buy some 0.036 blue ortholoy arch wire, and you can get that from many different companies. Ortho Organizers is one company which carries this particular wire. Take a piece of the 0.036 wire and you can cut that into thirds. And with your thumb, place your thumb in the middle of the arch wire, and you're going to bend each of the legs back off your thumb, and we'll form a little curvature like this. You can take your arch to determine how wide that needs to be until you get it to fit accordingly. Now if you take a marker, in this case we're going to make a lingual arch similar to this one, except I'm not going to make the helixes here. But as you notice, these bands on the molars have horizontal sheaths on it. And we're going to be making a double loop that's going to slide into that horizontal sleeve. And the horizontal sleeve has a little dimple or a crease on the distal part of the sheath, and that locks the wire into position. So when you place your sheaths on your bands, if you decide to weld them on yourself, always make sure that the dimple is placed to the distal, otherwise you will not be able to get the lingual arch into it. So if you're fabricating your own appliance, the molars are going to have bands on it, so you place a mark on your wire where the distal lingual cusp is. To bend this, you will need a lingual arch plier. It's 2 grooves in the front and 2 grooves in the back, and it has a fairly flat nose. From where your mark is, you hold with the top groove, you hold the wire just with a plier just distal to the mark, about 1 or 2 millimeters distal to the mark. You're going to bend the excess leg down, and you're going to bring the mesial leg up all the way into the plier like that. That will give you a little loop that appears like this. Now we want to close down that loop to make it smaller, so we will take the grooves in the front and squeeze it down to about that point, and then you're going to use the groove in the back to really compress that loop and get it really nice and snug there. So it will appear something like this. And then with this, that's all excess. So you can take your cutter and just cut the excess off of the wire. Now when you're cutting these wires, always hold them so they don't go flying in the places where you don't want it to fly. Okay. Then you go back to your model, reposition the wire in the position you want it. You're going to make a mark on the opposite molar, again where the distal lingual cusp is, on your wire. Taking your lingual arch plier again, you're going to hold the wire in the front groove, just distal to your mark, about 1 or 2 millimeters distal to the mark, and hold the wire so it's perpendicular to the plier. And again, the back leg is going to be pressed down against the plier, and the front leg is going to come up all the way over to the opposite 180 degrees over the top of the plier, and so it's like that. Again, you want to compress the loop, so you place it into the groove of the lingual arch plier, and then you use the back groove to compress it even further. Once again, you're going to cut off the excess, leaving probably about 2 millimeters so it appears similar to that. As I mentioned before, the bands have horizontal sheaths on, and with a Weingart plier you can push the appliance out like this. So this can be a fixed removable type of appliance, in that it's fixed in the patient's mouth, but you can remove it and the patient can't remove it. In order to place it back in, you slide it into the sheaths, and using the Weingart plier, you put one leg of the Weingart plier on the little excess tail that comes out, and then the back leg is against the sheath, and you just squeeze it, and that locks it into position for the patient. Now, in adjusting the lingual arch upon delivery, I find it's easier to adjust it with the bands in position. And what you need to do, first of all, you need to block out the areas where you do not want the cement to go. And for that we use, basically it's a chapstick material, and you place the chapstick with a plastic instrument in all the little holes that you do not want the cement to go into. Before you do that, you should micro etch the inside of the band using a little micro sandblaster, micro etcher, and that will give you much better retention with cementation. So first of all, place one of the bands on and see the position of the opposite band, and decide on what you want to do. In this case, let's say if we want this to be passive, this band is too far buckling, too far distally. So we take that off without taking the teeth out, and you can either bend it by hand, or you can use a 3-prong plier. And with your 3-prong plier, if you need it to go more distally, you would bend it in this manner. If you need it to go more mesially, you'd bend it in this manner, but that also brings it more buckly. So if you take a Weingart, you can hold the band like this, and you can push that part of the wire over, and you can constrict it with your fingers as well. So as we put it back in position, we now note that we're very close to where we need to be. If we need to upright those molars, we would want this band to be in a more buccal position, so we would open that up and widen that up a little bit. Then once you have that side, then place your band on the other side to see where that ends up over there. And in this case, it's much too buccal and more mesial. So we would take our 3-prong plier and we compress that down, so that's going to bring this leg lingually and a little more distally. Then again, try it in the mouth, and once you have it into the position that you need it to be, then you're ready for cementation. Now, the removing and placing the bands, you will need a couple of instruments. You need a band seater, which can look like this or this, and a band remover, which looks like this. Now, when seating the bands, you seat the band, and a lot of times you can seat it passively. You just need the band seater for the last little bit of compression. Sometimes the band doesn't conform exactly to the tooth, so you can just gently press the edges of the band in so they do conform with the tooth. The other type of band seater is one in which the patient assists you, and in that case you would place the band into position and ask the patient to gently bite down, and they would bite and they would seat the band as they open and close on the band seater. When you need to remove the band, you would use the band removing instrument. As you notice, it has a plastic top on it. That part is seated on the occlusal surface of the tooth, and as you come underneath with the other leg of the plier, you go from the lingual, and then you can come back to the buccal, and as you squeeze, you lift the band up off of the tooth and remove it in that manner with the band remover. As I mentioned before, there's all different shapes of lingual arches, from your basic design lingual arch, which is like this, or one in which looks like this, which has some helixes in. And the helixes allow you to either expand the lingual arch, make it longer, or you can squeeze the helixes down and that will make it shorter. Okay. The way of doing that, again, you could take a Weingart plier, you could compress the helix, and as you compress that helix, this part comes up, and you would take a bird beak plier and hold it there, and then just push that part down and come over to the other side and do the same thing. So you level it off and make it the same length as it was before. Another option that you have with lingual arches, either you can have the lab make them for you, you can make your own, or you can have the bands with the sheaths, the horizontal sheaths on, and Ortho Organizers makes a little kit of preformed lingual arches. They come in 4 different sizes, and they have the same design as the one that we made with the lingual arch plier, and they slide right into the horizontal sheath, and it's all pre-made and makes it nice and easy for you. So that's another option with the lingual arches. Another type of lingual arch appliance utilizes a vertical slot, and this is called a 3D Wilson 3D slot attachment. And how this works is each of these slots, the appliance has 2 little legs on it that fit into these little slots. There's a little opening in which you can fit a scaler, and you can, once you get the scaler into the opening, you can leverage it off of the occlusal surface of the tooth, and that will pop out the appliance. So the appliance looks like this, and it has these 2 little legs on it, and the attachment has these 2 little slots in which holds the legs once the appliance is in position. So again, this is a Wilson 3D attachment. The appliance that the Wilson 3D company makes is called a multi-action mandibular arch appliance, which is basically a lingual arch appliance incorporating some finger springs. And the finger springs can be adjusted to put some pressure on the lingual or the lower anteriors. If they are crowded, that will allow you to tip them out and align your lower anterior teeth. Now, how you adjust this appliance is similar to the regular lingual arch. However, if you need to expand the appliance, it has a little omega type of a loop here with some bends in it. If you take a bird beak plier, the bird beak plier has a square or triangular, about a flat end, and it has a round end on it. And if you place the square end in the lower section of the omega loop and compress that, that's going to drop that lower bar of the appliance down and forward. You do it on both sides. Again, the square goes in the middle, in the center, and as you squeeze, that's going to open up that omega, but it also drops that omega down. So it looks like this. Now, in order to bring that omega back up, you come into the back of the appliance and squeeze. And that will bring that up. And same thing on the other side. And you can also come in from this bend here, again with a square on the bottom, and squeeze, and that brings that up. And the square on the bottom on that little bend, and that will bring that up as well. Okay, so that's how you lengthen the omega bar. You can shorten that also by, again, compressing this and then making your adjustment bends to bring the bar horizontal once again. The finger loops, once this is in place here, when you're placing it in the mouth, you would hold it with a Weingart plier like this and place the two legs into the vertical slots. And again, check to see where these legs on the other side come. If you want to upright those, then you would take your 3-prong plier and do a bend in the front here that would expand this out a little bit, and that will bring your legs out there to expand your arch. Now, if you want to keep it passive, then try to line it up so it lines up with your legs, with the legs right in the position of the slots there, the vertical slots. Now, if you need to adjust the arms in the front, you can do that again with either a 3-prong plier say if it needs to bend it around, or if it's poking on the tongue, you can turn your plier the other way and bend it so it's away from the tongue. Or you can use a bird beak plier, and you can make your bends with the bird beak plier accordingly. Okay, with the bird beak plier, when you squeeze the wire, it's always going to squeeze away from the flat beak. It will bend towards the round beak, so that would tell you in which way to hold the plier. Whether if you want to bring the wire out here, then the flat's going to be inside. If you want to bring the curved wire in, then the flat will be on the outside when you squeeze. Okay. So those are the adjustments for the mandibular or multi-action mandibular arch, or the MAMA appliance, which is another form of the lingual arch. So let's go on and let's discuss the quad helix next.